Jim, are you ready on your end?
I am ready. Now, once again, it's 1, 2, 3, go, no, don't go. How do you do this?
We're going to count down from 5, and then I'm going to say, press play now, and you should press play on the word now. When I say now,
on the word now,
towards the W end of now, press play. Are you ready?
NASA does it the same way. I'm ready.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, press play now.
And you see the graphic, and I did it on the down of the W.
Thank you very much.
Jim Crockett had wonderful graphics back then. That was all done in the Nemo truck. Anyway, you see this is a big show because they sprung for the fog and the fog machine and the dry ice effect for the big intro. And look at the fucking fake police light up there going around. Tully and Baby Doll, the perfect 10. Doll had heat, and so did Tully because Doll was bigger than Tully was. And, you know, you see Tully's game face on. This is when he was young. He could move. He could go. He was legitimately 5'10", 215. And they'd add a few pounds to it when he was introduced because back then you expected larger guys. But Tully's whole thing was he was always constant motion. He was very aggressive, and he worked a style that worked for him, that made sense for him when he was in with bigger guys. Ring announcer Tom Miller from Greensboro, and is that, yes, it is indeed, Earl Hebner will be the referee. Magnum just looked like $1 million. The only thing he couldn't do naturally on television was smile. He could smile in person, but he wasn't a smiley person on TV. If he had had more time to bring more of that out of him, you know, but he was always very dour on television. Tom Miller had been the ring announcer in Greensboro since certainly the 70s, maybe the 60s. The most ineffectual comb over in wrestling history. Do you miss just a regular cyclone fence cage too, Brian, instead of these goddamn giant 5,000-pound apparatuses that take weeks to weld and build?
I miss a lot of the simplicity of wrestling back then because it just worked, and you could feel the intensity on both of these guys. You know, no one's playing to the crowd, no one's jumping up and down. You could feel it.
Well, the cage like that worked because it's okay if you had two guys that were going to have a fight and you want to put them in a cage to make sure nobody can get in or out. That's the kind of cage you'd build if you weren't doing it for a television production, but just to settle the issue. That's what it started with the WWF. That's what I told Vince one time about when I had the issue with Kevin Dunn. I said, everywhere else I've ever been, you shot the TV around the wrestling. Now you shoot the wrestling around the TV. Anyway, Tommy Young was a better ring mic worker for I Quit matches than Baby Earl there. But still, the point is also we've lost the guys saying I quit on the ring microphone so everybody can hear it that's in the arena. That's the ultimate humiliation, is it not? And most times they don't even use the microphone anymore. Anyway, Tully has that feisty bulldogishness to him. You saw he just got nailed and put down on his ass, and he pops back up like he's indignant that happened, but he's going to keep coming back. And of course, Magnum, especially early on, he's going to show Magnum stronger and bigger, but Tully's going to be tenacious.
Now, Magnum had only been there for less than a year because, of course, he had been the North American champion in Mid-South Wrestling towards the end of 1984. And like so many of the other stars from 1984 in Mid-South, he comes in, Midnight Express, Terry Taylor, Buddy Landel, Rock and Roll Express, and Magnum quickly got skyrocketed. He beat Wahoo for the U.S. title, then lost it to Tully, and then, of course, this match here got set up with that.
Well, Dusty was going to do with Magnum what he always did with Barry Windham. Make him the the matinee idol babyface, the number 2 guy behind Dusty himself. And it just that Wyndham's timing, he had left on the push and gone to, look at this exchange, by the way. Look at it. And you see Tully backing up, and it takes a knee. It's a steady, gradual thing where he doesn't just take a big bump from the first shot, but Magnum's wearing him down and is rocking him with those things. Where I was going with that was it just so happened that Barry's timing was horrible there because the 85-86 run would have been the biggest of his career if he'd have been in this spot, and he was a better worker than Magnum, but Magnum had more determination than Barry. You know, Barry slacked off on a number of big spots. Magnum was determined. He was always going to get better. And let's see, Tully just he stays on a guy. He's a little fucking, as Arn used to call him, a wombat. But God, he's the prick quarterback. He's not the big fucking lineman. He was the prick fucking college quarterback on a football team, that son of a fucking local wrestling legend, got a lot of shit handed to him. It didn't mean he didn't have a work ethic, but that's the personality that he gave off. Anyway, they've already started using the cage, and as a matter of fact, Magnum just got fucking thrown into the cage, and he's bleeding.
He did it as he was rolling around. Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the way he did it. And the reason why he's not bleeding better is because Magnum was not yet really a veteran at doing that, or he would have been able to get a little better his first go-round. Tully's probably letting him know that he's a little short. But, yeah, you didn't have time to waste and lay there. I mean, Ray Stevens would take that upside-down bump in the turnbuckle, and he'd hit his head on the post, and he'd blade on his way back, flipping back into the ring. Just that quick. That's because the guys were used to it back then. Now it's a major procedure, and everybody has to cover up everything. And anyway, boom. But Tully has been on Magnum, but look, Magnum still keeps firing back. And the momentum changes back again. So now, even though that Magnum might be bleeding a little bit, now he's got Tully where he wants him. It's another thing the cage matches are missing. If you've got metal, steel surrounding the entire ring, and you're throwing each other into it, somebody should get busted open. It's these guys, they'd rather do these dives where everybody could be fractured and paralyzed and go to the hospital for surgery instead of use a blade. Somehow that's horrendous to everybody's safety. Boom! Tully once again creates an opening for himself. He uses the cage desperation move to get Magnum put down, where he's probably going to the well again, make sure we can get a little bit more blood. But nobody is worried about what move they're going to do here that's going to be impressive, because they're too much worried about having a fight that people are going to believe is the culmination of this months-long blood feud that they've had, where both have done horrible things to each other.
Yeah, nothing feels pre-planned. Nothing feels choreographed. It feels in the moment.
Well, yeah, and that's because most of it wasn't, because, as I said, Tully is the captain of the ship here, and he's not telling Maggie a lot of times what to do as far as exactly what to do, but he's just telling him, come back, or I'm going to stop you, or whatever, just the flow of the thing. I think Tully should be any second here now. I don't think Magnum threw him head first to the cage there, but he looks like he might have his sword in hand. Is Tully bleeding yet? Baby doll is shocked. Yes, Tully's bleeding. And he just gave doll his blade. And nobody saw that until I just pointed it out, because you're not looking. You didn't know what you were looking for. Or I thought he gave it to Doll there. He may have fucking put it in Magnum's trunks. See, I haven't seen this match in 20 years. One way or another, boom, the point is, look at these shots. They're taking time to throw shit and say, oh, well, that's what it was. Tully, he got it on his arm because he had gone arm first into the cage. They're taking time to make what they're doing to each other look like something and look like a struggle, rather than worrying about running through this at a high rate of speed. I don't know. you don't see anybody actually trying to have a conflict like this anymore. And it's so different. It's almost like a completely different product.
You were right
Boom.
back. Tully, constant motion.
Yeah, because as a smaller guy, he had to be. He had to be more aggressive, and he had to be the fucking little pit bull that would wear you down. And the body language, where you look, you can see he'll throw a kick, but then he'll sell himself. This looks like a war of attrition with the body language that they're using, where this shit hurts and it's taking a toll on them. Look at the facials. Can you imagine Johnny Gargano? Now, yeah, Tully trying to make it say it. Say I quit. Say I quit. Can you imagine Johnny Gargano making those faces? And look at those shots.
And those are great because you can hear them. Every time he hits them with the mic, the whole building hears it.
Because the microphone's on. And he, browbeating him, screaming at him, up in his face. And you can look at those punches. Boom, the visual here backs up what they're trying to accomplish. There's no buzz killer to take you out of the moment. Tully's arm's bleeding. Fucking Magnum's head is bleeding. He's just drilling him. And he goes for the cover out of fucking force of habit, and the referee doesn't go for the count. That's just that little thing that shows the people in the arena, oh, that's right. One of them's got to quit. They can't be pinned.
Is Earl doing the right thing here? Should he be doing more? Should he be doing less?
Well, no.
Can't do much less. Yeah.
You can't do much less, but he's not supposed to do any more because the idea is there are no rules. Tommy Young would have been probably making better facials, a little more Marcel Marceau, but because remember, Earl was young here. This is 35 years ago. He's kind of a green referee at that point. Tommy, I believe, was in, because Dusty and Rick were in Atlanta, so Tommy was in the Omni. But see, Tully's getting the heat on Magnum. And by getting the heat on Magnum, Magnum is selling. This is the heat portion of the match where the heel kicks the shit out of the babyface and gets the heat on him and gives the people the impression that the babyface is in trouble and all hope is lost. And, Tully came off the top rope a minute ago with an elbow or a double sledge or whatever, and he's hitting these elbows that are stiff, but this is high impact shit that people can identify with instead of a lot of wrestling moves. People can, they're fucking punching and kicking and dropping on each other. This is a fight. It looks animalistic. And look at Magnum crawl on his knees. And the thing now is everybody's showing the effects. But now remember what Tully was doing a second ago. Now Magnum gets the opportunity. This is a babyface comeback, but not in the traditional shoot you off, backdrop, drop kick kind of way. The worm has turned. Now the babyface is getting his chance to get even with this guy. And he's doing the same thing. Come on, motherfucker. Give up. Say I quit. And just this, they're not taking just normal bumps like they teach in wrestling school. They're dropping. They're fucking staggered. There's a lot of grunting and groaning going. We're listening to it with sound all the way off so we can hear each other. But there's a lot of grunting and groaning and spitting about going on as they try to rip at each other, as I recall here. And look at this and shit just fucking... They're just throttling each other. And the people were going nuts because it was a fight between two people. He's going for his eye. A fight between two people. They'd been seeing this for months. They wanted to know what was going to happen. They didn't come to see a 4-star gymnastics performance. They came to see Magnum get even and make this motherfucker give up. I will say Crockett's crew outdid themselves on the camera work here that was usually really stinky on these big events, but they didn't do too bad on this one.
Oh, they did great here, especially, as the match goes on, you'll see later on, great camera work.
They probably knew it. If they hadn't got all of this one, Dusty would have been pissed. And look, Magnum just looks like as he's going into it, just looks like a fucking, he looked like who Magnum TA was supposed to be. This fucking babyface kick-ass guy that rode a motorcycle. And you can see Tully tell Magnum fire up there a little bit. It really, that's the thing. When guys called matches, they might call the move right as they're shooting somebody off, duck it, crossbody or whatever. But a good heel knew how to call a match where the babyface would come back, but not too much. Or then he'd get stopped and he'd sell, but he'd say, "Don't die. Stay with it." So the babyface would fire back and the heel would have to stop him again. It was controlling the tempo. And I mean, look at this, and just shoving it in his fucking face after he'd been hitting him with it. But that's the thing. The good heel would control a tempo and bring you on those. That's what Flair was a master at, the peaks and the valleys. He wouldn't be telling his opponent exactly what foot to put in front of another. He would just keep coming. Come on, come on, come on, or back up, or stop, or whatever the fuck. Look, there's a nice cross-section of Americana in the building. Young girls, older people. Where'd they all go? Oh, I forgot they don't watch this phony shit anymore. Fuck you, Earl.
Such great intensity. I mean, that's what you don't see in wrestling anymore. And there comes the chair.
You go. As we threw the referee down, and Dahl throws in the chair, and it's a wooden chair, one of those Klondike Bill specials. Because if it was a metal chair, he couldn't get a fucking spike. And now this is when everybody remembers really fucking the intensity in the building, especially picking up, because they're like, okay, they've gone too far. Somebody's lost it here. He's going for his eye. It is very disturbingly close. I forgot how close they got, but look, Magnum's coming back. And if we had the sound up, you would hear people starting to register. Wait a minute. Oh my God, Magnum, yes. And it's a slow fight from underneath. I got to get it. And now, when Magnum sees the fucking gimmick, and now, cocksucker, as Brute Bernard used to say, cocksucker, and there's Tully with his right hand, getting a little extra sauce for what is it? That's one of the slats that's been fucking ripped out of the chair, and basically the referee was saying, do you quit? Do you quit? And Tully said, as we famously remember, there's Klondike Bill, by the way, one of my favorite people in all the world. And Tully didn't say, I quit. He said, yes, 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 right? So it gave him an out, but he still quit. And now look at him selling the fucking damage to his face and his eye. And Magnum just walks off like, fuck you. Did they hug and kiss and thank each other for the match? And shake hands and hold each other's hand up? Brian, did you see that? I didn't see that.
Certainly not. Well, Baby Doll never did a Elizabeth impression like she's doing here tonight.
And Magnum walked off from him like he was a piece of shit, because that's the whole idea of the goddamn thing.
Look at that replay. Blood shooting down his face as Magnum sticks the spike into his forehead.
And Tully sticks the blade into his. And, and people are still to this day going, oh, that's so barbaric. They bladed each other. Oh, my God. The fucking, what was it, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Randy Orton laid there and let Brock Lesnar elbow him open for a shoot. That big beast with shoot elbows. Fuck, give me the blade and get out of my way before I'll lay there for that. Or, as we've mentioned, for any of these other dives off the roof that these guys are going to the hospital and being operated on and being put in casts for months at a time. They'd rather do that, and that's fine, but get a little color? Christ. Anyway, does that do you think, Brian, show people what you can do when you have two grown men who know what they're doing, trying to simulate a fight, and with the violence and the intensity, and it doesn't have to be gymnastics, and it doesn't have to be constant motion if it means something. And big point here, the people care going in about who's in the match to begin with. If they care about you, then you've got them. If they don't care about you going in, then all the hoop-de-doo in the world won't change that in one match.
You know, we often talk about matches. Do they hold up? That certainly holds up, but more than that, it stands out even more today than it did then, obviously, because you don't see intensity. Even when you see a match that people rave about, guys never look as exhausted as they just looked in that match. They don't sell every little thing the way they just did in that match. You know, that match holds up. That match stands out to this day. And I still got this thing running right now. Who's the referee in your tag team match here?
Well, I'll tell you here in a second, because I don't really know. I didn't have mine running. I stopped mine. Wait a minute. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Just who was the referee? Give me a shot of the referee. Now I'm buffering. It's a slow developing. Oh my God, that. Boy, he's greener than a pepper tree. I'm trying to remember it. Bobby takes a big hip toss out on the concrete or actually a flying Beal from Handsome Jimmy. That was a kid that was refereeing down in the Georgia end. Maybe his name, I can't remember his name, but he didn't last long, and boy, you can tell he's green just because he's lost. He don't know what to do. And by the way, this was Street Fight there, just a little comment. Dennis Condrey had the idea to do the tuxedos. Bobby and Dennis and I all came out in tuxedos for a street fight, which they knew was going to get bloody and ripped off, but that was the idea. Just that was our first big show there, and instead of just doing what everybody else did, we'd come in and Dennis has a white tuxedo on, Bobby's is black. I think mine was, can't remember, powder blue or something over there. Yes, anyway, just to show what snide heels we were. And then, of course, they all got ripped off and bloody and everything. But that's another story for another time.
You know, one other point, because you brought up the fact that they did almost $100,000 at the Superdome. And we listed the 3 matches Bill Watts had. Nothing really that stands out. I mean,
yeah,
nothing to take away from Slater and Sawyer and Butch Reed and Jake and Humongous, but it was 3 matches. Nick Patrick wrestling twice. But a big part of it is the fact that all of those Mid-South stars were going to be seen on that event. The people who were in that Superdome a year earlier to see the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express, they were going to see both them. They were going to see Terry Taylor, who had been champion there a year earlier. Magnum TA, champion there a year earlier. Buddy Landell, one of the top heels there a year earlier. All these stars of 1984, early 85 Mid-South.
The Thanksgiving 1984 Superdome, the main event was the Rock and Roll and Midnight and the Scaffold. So we had pretty much their top 2 or 3 matches from that period. Well, there you go.
And with that, the drive-thru has closed.